I appreciate everybody coming out. My name is Cody Haddad. I'm the town administrator here in Dartmouth. Next to me, I have Jim Kiley, our assistant superintendent for finance and operations. And then we also have Gary Carrero, our budget and finance director for the town of Dartmouth. So this meeting is going to focus, it's the second of our 3 long-range capital planning workshop meetings. This one will focus on our public schools here in Dartmouth. And so I just want to start, as we're doing with every one of these workshop meetings, with an overview of what long-range capital is. So essentially, we're looking forward into the future, beyond a typical 5 or 10-year capital plan, so we can anticipate and prepare for our large projects. By doing this, hopefully we're able to save money and come up with a solution to some of these issues that we're facing. We're looking at projects such as schools, large projects that we typically would have to borrow for and plan for over a long period of time. And we've worked with our long-range capital planning group to identify those projects, and we'll use that as we go forward to present possible solutions. Why do we need long-range capital planning? As I mentioned, preparation. It allows us to plan and be fiscally responsible for the way that we pursue these projects in town. There's potentially cost-saving measures as we look at, can we combine some of these if we're going to go for long-term borrowing, debt exclusions? Is there an opportunity to go at this from a holistic approach? And also improve services. Our long-range capital planning strengthens Dartmouth's public resources for current and future residents. So with that, we will start with our public schools projects. We've identified a number of projects that Mr. Kiley will go over tonight. And our public schools projects are really a town-led initiative to build, expand, renovate, or modernize our public school facilities to better serve our students, teachers, and community. And we have identified, like I said, 4 school projects. Before we get into this too much, I just want to mention, we have recognized that there is an acute interest in the operational needs of the community, particularly regarding our schools. We saw that at our Springtown meeting with some interest in the school budget. And certainly we have a big group in town that is looking at that. So we have a great leadership team with Jim and Gary and myself, but we also have a finance committee that is diligently working on this. We recently implemented a budget advisory group which has membership from the finance committee, our select board, and our school committee to really look at this from a high level in a collaborative approach. So while that's very important and we are focusing on that, I just want to emphasize that tonight's goal is really to look at our facilities and our long-range capital. So if you have questions on the more operational side, I encourage you to get involved with the finance committee and the budget advisory group, and we can address those questions there. So, all right, Jim, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Cody. So before we take a look at each project that's in, I guess what I'd like to start with is an overview of the steps to complete a public school construction project. So first step would be identify a school project that is the priority. We're going to talk about several projects today. And it would apply, these steps would apply for all of them. So the first thing we would do on a large project, which is the type of projects that we're talking about and in our long-term planning, is to prepare a statement of interest for the school committee and select board to consider. Now, a statement of interest is an application to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which is the governing body that assists in school construction in Massachusetts and also determines funding for the projects. So if we submit, then the MSBA would evaluate our submission based on our need and how much money they have available from the state. So the MSBA is funded through a penny on the sales tax in the state. So everything you buy, 1 penny of that sales tax goes to the MSBA for school construction projects. If we were approved by MSBA, then an owner's project manager and designer would be selected. Then we would need to seek funds to conduct a feasibility study. So a feasibility study would allow us to analyze all options for resolution of an issue, and we'll see how that works as we go on and talk about the specific projects. Then we would need to seek funding for design and construction. So depending on the complexity of the project, it would require several town meeting votes and at least one debt exclusion vote, which it would be at an election in town. And then because of all of the feasibility study, design work, construction work, and all the votes required, it would take several years to complete a project. So the first project that we identified was the Dartmouth High School roof and window replacement. So a little bit background on the roof and windows. They were installed in 2001 as the building was being constructed. This is the Dartmouth High School, 555 Bakerville Road, our newest building. The roof is 132,000 square feet. It's made of rubber EPDM material. It was designed to last 15 years. It had a 15-year warranty. We're now approaching 25 years on that. The 453 windows are aluminum and were designed to last 20 years. So some of the things that are deficiencies on the roof and windows: we have active leaks in the library, the gym, the cafeteria, the hallways, and the classrooms. Flashing is compromised in various forms on the roof. Thermal expansion and settlement have damaged masonry to the point of cracking and deterioration. Most of the windows in that building, feel free to take a ride around or stop in. Most of the windows are filled with condensation and foggy. It's sort of a hazy look on the windows. The rooftop HVAC equipment is beyond its useful life. It's rusted and it's caused water infiltration. These are some pictures depicting some of the things that were identified in 2023. We had an engineer do a roof condition study on the high school at that time. So these show a variety of conditions, but patches of the roof. We were fortunate that the Finance Committee had allocated some money. We spent $100,000 to sort of shore up the roof with short-term fixes. So, you know, we're patching leaks. There's still more leaks that we can't fix and that money's expended. There's areas of masonry that needed to be cut away to investigate the leaks in the flashing. Foggy windows, you'll see at the top right. I didn't go looking for the worst window. I just happened to be in the library and I said, oh yeah, there we go. It's a good time to take a picture. The whole building's like that. Cracks and deterioration are shown in the bottom two pictures. So a little bit about DHS. Meanwhile, we're dealing with all those issues. We have 880 kids in the building every day. We have 138 full and part-time staff, so more than 1,000 people in the building every day. We have a wide range of offerings. We have 26 AP offerings for kids. 65% of students are involved in at least one extracurricular activity, athletics, music, clubs, and activities. It's a busy and productive building. Most days, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or later. So we get a lot of use out of that building. The town is lucky to have it. So where are we in the process and where are we headed? So a statement of interest was prepared and unanimously supported by the Select Board and the School Committee. We submitted that to the MSBA. If we are accepted by the MSBA, they would fund approximately 50% of the total cost. In 2022, that was estimated to be about $6 million. I would imagine it's more now. We are seeking $250,000 in funding at the October 21st town meeting, which would allow us to, if accepted by MSBA, to conduct a feasibility study, looking at all the options, determining what type of roof work needs to be done, how much masonry work needs to be done, and what materials we're going to use. It would also give us information about a project budget that we would be able to move forward with and ask for funding at a future town meeting. So it would require those, at least one future town meeting vote, if not more, to move forward with the design and construction costs. And it would also involve a debt exclusion vote at an election. So the next project on our list is the replacement of this building. So this building's 193,345 square feet. It was built in 1956. We currently have 850 students here. The 2017 Facilities Master Plan recommended that this be a priority for a future project. The building systems have surpassed their useful life. In 2016, MSBA came down and they ranked every building in the state, and we were in the bottom 16% of schools statewide in terms of this building. There's some pictures of existing conditions. I have a printout I'd be happy to share with anyone. I think what the pictures show is that we've done our best to maintain this building, and I think we've done a good job, but it's tired building. It's really, you know, it's 70 years old and it's served the town well, but at some point we need to consider the next steps. So, where do we want to be? We want a modern educational facility that's going to meet the needs of Dartmouth students for a long time. We would need to partner with the MSBA to do that. The school committee and the select board would need to consider when to submit a statement of interest. We're going to prepare one in 2026, so they can begin to consider when to submit that in 2026. If we're invited to the MSBA process, we would need funding in stages. Again, first, a feasibility study that would look at all options for replacement of this building, including one that we've been considering, which is to build, instead of a middle school, build a high school on this property and use the current high school as a middle school moving forward and reconfigure grades and really impact the whole community with a new modern state-of-the-art high school on this property. But they will take a look at all of the options in that feasibility study. So once a path is decided, we would need design and construction funds, design first at a town meeting, fully cost out the project and determine what the scope of it is, and then at another town meeting we would need construction funding. We would also need debt exclusion votes for that project. It would take quite a few years to complete that project. 4 probably is the low end of how long it would take to complete that project. So the DeMello and Potter schools were constructed in 1955, a year before this building. They're an interesting duo for those that don't know. They were designed by the same architect. They were constructed by the same contractor. They are both 53,000 square feet. And if you're in certain parts of them, you don't know which you're in unless you've really been around a lot. Right now, DeMello has 380 students and Potter has 410. Similarly to the middle school, both of those building systems have surpassed their useful life. Also similar to the middle school, I think we've done a good job maintaining them through the years. Here are some typical conditions in the buildings. Again, these are buildings that are 70 years old and are getting tired, and we need to have a plan for the future as to how we're going to educate our kids. So, our goal, again, is to have modern educational facilities that'll meet kids' needs. Both projects would require MSBA participation. We'd follow a similar process to the middle school where we prepare a statement of interest, bring it forward to the school committee and then the select board for their consideration. So the long-range capital plan anticipates that a statement of interest would be prepared for consideration in 2030 for those projects. The Quinn School, other than the high school, our newest building, built in 1967. Has almost 122,000 square feet, and 670 students every day. The building systems on this building have all surpassed their useful life as well. Similar to the other schools, I think we've done a good job maintaining them as best we can, and we'll need to do a lot more if we follow the schedule that we've talked about with the Long-Term Capital Planning Committee, which is to prepare a statement of interest for that building in 2040. Basically, it would be the same process that I discussed for the other buildings that we would need to follow. Prepare a statement of interest for consideration, and the boards in town would decide when to submit. And then we'd wait to hear from MSBA. I mean, I think in terms of all of these projects, we're in a good place with MSBA for a number of reasons. Number one, we haven't done a project with MSBA ever. The high school was under the Department of Ed's School Building Authority, which no longer exists. They took it away from the Department of Ed, and they created this entity funded by the sales tax. And it's a high-functioning group. They know what they're doing. They're very helpful in terms of determining scopes of projects, and so they do have a backlog in terms of time to accept projects into their system because they do have a limited amount of money. However, I think not having done major projects with them, I've done several roofs in my time here with them, but those are the biggest projects we've done, I think puts us in a good position. So, just in summary, the projected timeline would be in 2025, we wait to hear from MSBA. They have a board meeting on October 29th, not long after our October 21st town meeting. We're hoping to hear whether we're accepted for the high school roof project at that point. We would need additional town meeting and debt exclusion votes if that happens, but hopefully, if we receive approval at town meeting for the feasibility study money, we'll be able to move forward with that in the meantime while we arrange for funding of the actual design and construction at a future town meeting. In 2026, we will prepare a statement of interest for the middle school for consideration of the boards. In 2030, we're looking at DeMello and Potter School as a statement of interest, and then in 2040, the Quinn School. So those are the school projects that we've highlighted in the long-range capital planning process.
Great presentation. Thanks, Jim. So while we're here, I just want to highlight our next meeting is going to be on our DPW, our Public Works projects. That'll take place on September 30th at the Southworth Library. If you've been following this process, that is a little bit of a change. We initially were planning on the 25th over at the North Branch, but there was a conflict with another important meeting in town, so we did change it to the 30th over at Southworth, and that'll focus on DPW projects. So at this point, we would like to open it up to questions. You know, if there's anyone in the audience that has a question on any of the school projects or any of the information that's been presented tonight, we just ask that you go to the mic and we can, just so that way there can be caught on TV, because we are recording this, and I think the questions can be very helpful to the community as they review this tape.
Hi, I'm Maureen, teacher and parent. I just have a question about what happens if the MSBA declines the roof project? Do all these things get pushed out?
So if the roof project is not approved on October 29th or at a future MSBA meeting in the near term, we wouldn't start the feasibility study without their approval. We really can't. Because on those projects, those accelerated repair projects, they appoint the owner's project manager. It's not a selection by the town. So we have to wait for them to start that process. So it would delay things for sure for that project. Now, I think, our intent is to move forward with a statement of interest to create a statement of interest for the board's consideration for the middle school, regardless of the status of the roof project. So we'd still be doing that. If we aren't selected in this year, they have an annual cycle for selection at MSBA. If we're not selected, it would be considered for the following cycle. So hopefully we feel some positive discussion has been had with MSBA. They came down and visited Dartmouth High School and went up on the roof, and so we've had a couple of meetings with them, and we're hopeful that we'll be, favorably considered. Thank you for your question.
Chris O'Neill, the number of projects normally approved during the year, if you have an idea of that figure?
Yeah, so it varies because it's all about the scope of the projects. If they're doing a, don't be shocked by this number, a $300 million high school, which that is actually what they could cost for a large high school now, it's going to be less other projects. So what typically they're doing on the accelerated repair side, so when we're talking about the roof, they are funding about 40 projects. Now, I saw like one, for instance, is the Holyoke High School roof, which I just saw the budget of, and I got a little worried. It's a big building and much bigger than our building, but it was $13 million. So that might take money away from other projects, moving forward. So they balance that, but they're going to accept a fair number of projects in the state, but there's a lot of competition. I believe they had 90 accelerated repair applications. So it's less than 50% chance just right off the bat. But
Is there a standard percentage contribution, or does it fluctuate?
it varies by community, which also impacts things, right? So it's based on the wealth of the community in which Dartmouth is not favorably represented, just like our Chapter 70 funding and state funding, right? Because
As we've discussed, right?
yeah, so what we would likely receive about 50% of the project. So I mean, it's on a project the scope of what we're talking about. It's pretty vital that we, obtain a help from MSBA.
Thanks,
It would
Jim.
be a lot of money.
Hello, Nathan Silva. Quick question on the DeMello and Potter. Is the intention to do both of those at the same time if we're submitting the statement of interest in 2030?
That's a very good question. Our intent is, it's a difficult one because they are built at the same time, right? And they're both in similar condition and both need to be done. I think what our intent would be is to prepare the statements of interest for both buildings. I am not sure that MSBA would consider both buildings at the same time. I have a feeling they won't. So it may be likely that we have to do one before the other, which is going to be a very difficult thing for the town to decide. And obviously, we'll have to, work with MSBA and work with folks in town to try and determine which one's first, if that's the case. But I don't anticipate that MSBA is going to fund them both at the same time, even if we ask them to.
It's the fastest I've run in 60 years. First question that occurred to me while listening, if the feasibility study calls for a renovation as opposed to a tear down, what is the MSBA's, is the funding issue similar?
Funding is similar, yes. You likely would lose, if MSBA and the community agree that that's the way to go for any of these projects, you would likely lose some reimbursement percentage. Because the MSBA, amongst its different ways, different calculations for reimbursement, includes calculation for energy efficiency and for essentially modernizing the buildings that you won't be able to meet with a renovation project. That said, that might be 2 or 3% of the overall project, so while on a big project that could be quite a bit of money, it may be less expensive to renovate if they feel the building could effectively be renovated. But those would be things that you would begin to determine in that feasibility study phase with MSBA.
But actually, the MSBA really is really a partner of the town, because they do a comprehensive study, and if they agree with what we're trying to do and they make recommendations, it's a good thing, because they could make a fair evaluation of our situation.
I think that's a correct statement. They will not agree to anything that they don't feel is the best interest of, the project that we're talking about. So they're going to carefully consider the different options, and they will rule options out and just tell us that they're not going to partner with us on certain options if they're not the right option. So they know what they're doing. They have a very professional staff, very knowledgeable, and they'll work with the owner's project manager, the designer, the community, and to determine what's best. And in some ways, we might not have a lot of options. They may tell us, okay, if you want to do a school project, a construction project, it's got to be this. And we can decide whether we want to do it or not.
One last very unfair question. Did we consider a 2 elementary school end-all as opposed to the 3 we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that needs to be considered if we proceed with any major school construction project, we need to carefully look at enrollment and determine how we could best meet the needs of the town. The one school that wasn't mentioned tonight is the 1922 Cushman School. It was highlighted in the 2017 Facilities Master Plan, and in every possible scenario, it was to close it. So that's something that needs to be considered. Now, in order to incorporate preschool without the Cushman School, you would need to size elementary schools right, and you would need to consider grade structure at the elementary level, grade structure at the middle school level, and grade structure at the high school level to make that work. So it will be complicated, like Mr. Silva mentioned, if they do not agree to do 2 buildings at once eventually, when the town gets there. It will make this much more difficult to accomplish, but still possible. It is the 3rd largest community in Massachusetts from a land area perspective. We currently now have elementary kids on a bus for an hour. If we locate 2 schools in town, it's going to be hard to minimize the time on the bus for kids. Pretty major factor, I think, for a lot of people. So it's something to consider. The other thing is a 800 student elementary school the right thing to do? And so we have to think about that carefully and consider that. But MSBA would partner with us in looking at that, those options for sure.
Just a quick follow-up. So if the Potter and DeMello did not go simultaneously, would the intention be to fit both projects into the 2030 decade before Quinn starts
Yes.
in 2040?
That would be the intent, yes. If we would like to do them both within, 5 years, if we could accomplish that, for sure.
Any other questions before we wrap up here? Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Jim. That was a great presentation. The goal of this, as I mentioned, is really to start to spread the awareness. You're seeing we have some large projects coming up in the community, and the goal of us is to make sure that the community is aware of this, and can we do this in a way that is financially feasible for us? We recognize that the biggest question from our residents is going to be, what's it going to cost me, right? What is the impact on my tax bill going to be? We're just not at that point yet. Once we start, really looking at which projects we're going to bring forward, that's when we'll start to dive into those numbers. But as Jim mentioned, it's such fluctuation at this point in time. A roof that was $6 million in 2022, we don't know what that'll be, but we see Holyoke right at 13 million, and granted it's a much larger building. So for us to start throwing out preliminary numbers just wouldn't be accurate at this time, and we're just trying to spread awareness to these projects and make sure the community is aware. So stay tuned as we share more information on this, and we will share that information with the community once we have projects going forward. I think Mr. Tattlebaum has one more
If I
comment.
may. We have asked the school committee to do something that they were not prepared to do. And look out as far as we have. These schools would have come along on a yearly basis. What do we do now? But we asked them to look way into the future, because that's the way the long-range plan. And I think Jim and his whole staff has done an incredible job getting us on the road. None of this stuff may come out exactly as explained. There's going to be a lot of adjustments and changes. But what he did for us is get us on the road along, because it's our biggest budget. We have a lot to do, and to get us on the road to plan so we can then make it feasible to get these jobs done and let our residents know what the cost is going to be as we go forward. So I sincerely thank what the school committee, the school administration has done to get us on this road to try to make a plan that makes sense and people can actually have opinions about and vote on, and we'll give them all the information that we can give them as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. With that, I will close. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anyone watching this live or in the future, feel free to reach out to Jim's office or my office directly, and we will work to answer your questions. We thank you all for coming out. Have a good night. Thank you.